This is the ZMAR Podcast. Elite Benefits of America helps small and mid-sized companies with their health insurance programs. And now, your host, Butch ZMAR.
We're going to talk about the pure act of discipline and when human nature collides. I'm not an expert at this, but recently I was reminded of the fact of discipline and doing things the right way was much like a muscle. If you don't work the muscle or you take it for granted, you'll never forge ahead, just in general, right? And so even if you take example of any sport, any professional sport that is, very few over the years ever make it to the professional level of pure talent, right? Just by itself. It takes the disciplines and practice over and over in the right areas in order to get there. You're not going to make it just by showing up and expecting to win. Even if you look at the workforce, your employees, just for a quick moment, many of them don't even look forward to going into work, especially on a Monday, even though there's some of us that love Mondays. And then when it comes to 4:30, they're already cleaning up their desk and leaving the work. And then as you watch them walk to the parking lot or parking garage, it's most likely that they had backed into their parking spot and it's the nearest one to the door so they could take off the fastest. It's easier to do this way, right? It is the way. Many will think that military is very disciplined, and I would agree for the most part the military is very disciplined. But don't be fooled though. There's many countless veterans and active duty folks who struggle with discipline either by personality traits or on purpose. You still have those. It's the outlier 10%, if you want to call it that. But even if you refer to discipline are those who come from the military, I believe it's mostly because in the military, there's outside influences that force the discipline. They get you for a very short time in the beginning, usually 8 to 12 weeks in boot camp. And this isn't very much time to recreate a behavior and teach them discipline to follow orders and do the right thing. Just hard to do that in such a short period of time. Of course, there's urgency there, right? And you had a desire to at least be there. And then they try to make it uncomfortable to force you to change, but we don't do it ourselves. But this also drives the universal law called Parkinson's law. It's the law that a task will fill the allotted time. So boot camp within a certain short period of time. So there's some urgency to create some discipline because that's what they're trying to invoke, to get you to follow orders and then follow suit, right? And so if you talk to many military people, especially like I would say the more disciplined areas, such as, the Marines or even the Army. I'm not saying the Air Force and the Navy are not, but I'm just saying that you could almost have a given output. Everybody's remotely the same as far as discipline goes. But given that short time frame, you're able to perform a behavioral change within a short period of time. This is Parkinson's law. What does it even mean, right? So let's say you have to run a business proposal to whatever you're selling to a business, and or you're trying to follow up with emails, or even if personally you're just trying to clean the house, right? You give yourself a time frame to get it completed. Almost 100% of the time, you will always complete and complete the task, or mostly complete the task within the allotted time frame, right? If you have 4 weeks to come up with a proposal to present to an employer, it is most likely that you will have it completed in 3 weeks and 5 days. And then you pat yourself on the back and say you're 2 days earlier than the deadline, right? The reality is this is not discipline at all because you took most of the time. Forget the 2 days. It just took the whole time, right? But discipline is you have 4 weeks to get it done, and you complete it within the first 3 to 5 days everything from start to finish. That's discipline. In fact, you're working the muscle, and if you're working it consistently, right, you're doing this on a regular basis, you will complete the proposal even more so faster within 24 to 48 hours. You don't have to wait the 4 weeks. It's all ready to go. Some people will refer to this as an overachiever, and rightly so. Or that they don't have anything else to do. And I would, without knowing anything else, I would agree with you, the latter, right? They have nothing else to do, right? So they turn it around within 24, 48 hours. And that's most people probably. that are in that situation. However, if you look at many of the disciplined people out there, I know some people I do a lot of things a lot faster and quicker than most and accomplish more, I guess, but I'm not a rock star by any means. It's just more of working through the tasks, whether it's internal or external of the office. But if you work with these disciplined people, they would probably had worked on that proposal while they worked on trying to get a zero inbox and responding to everything that is required of them, while running appointments either by phone or in person. They were also working on more appointments for this current week or the following week or some distant future of, or within the near future of appointment loading. And they were probably completing not just that one proposal, but they were probably completing 5 to 10 proposals within the same time frame. And if you catch them out of the office, they're probably chasing the kids around, whether it's school or sports, and they're probably reading 50 plus books a year. What's more interesting is that, all of them would probably, if you stop them, they probably would say, I could do better. I could do better than this. I can accomplish more. I can make this more efficient. They could have done more during that time frame. And in fact, some cases, they believe that they could actually crush their current status of accomplishments during that same time frame. They could achieve so much more. And whereas the rest of the world that's average, if you want to call it that, will look at it and say that they're just killing it, but they're looking at more. It's the pure state of discipline. Most people just give up because it's hard, it's challenging, and very disciplined. It's an act, right? It's like a muscle, right? So if you don't use that muscle, it's hard to do, right? Eventually, but even for them, it eventually gets tired, weak. You're not working the same muscle and you're doing something else, or you're doing too much more. It's just like going to the gym, right? If you overwork a muscle, eventually you can't do the same performance. You can't do the same thing. So even the discipline have to redefine their purpose. They have to figure out different ways or more efficiency. They do get off the beaten track. Life is very distracting. But some of us just want to go mud in once in a while before they head back to the highway and keep going. All right. So they're human too. They achieve a lot, but at the same token, they do get off track a little bit, and they have to regain focus along the way just to keep forging ahead. But a lot of people couldn't even imagine being in that position to achieving so much in such a short period of time, or moving to greater outcomes without, they just can't put the thought process behind it, right? And sometimes they don't have the desire of it. So you talk to some people and they're like, there's no way, I'm not going to do this. This is crazy, right? And that's okay too. There's many books that talk about this out there, but one of the books that I'm going to refer to, there's a couple of them I'm going to talk about, but one of them here is called 10X is Better Than 2X. It's written by a guy named Dan Sullivan. Most people turn their efforts up, and they usually don't go much more than 2 times their current effort. And that's okay too, right? And so it's usually accomplishing more. Usually it's enough to keep your job, enough to finish a deadline, finish a project. 2X usually gets them to the finish line. In their mind, it's a lot. And when we compare it to a lot, it's usually when you're comparing it to average, or some people call, it's just mediocrity standards, right? And so it's the way life has become, and even in the workplace, right? Work ethic has gone down, and the discipline, it just looks like the outlier. But it's because the average became the norm. And it's unfortunate because people could achieve so much more. But in this book, they talk about when you make it 10X, it actually becomes easier than doing 2X. And it is. It really is. And I have personal experience of that too. It's like if we took an airplane, for example, and if the plane only went 2 times the idle speed or any normal speed, it may never even take off the runway. You would just keep going and run out of runway and crash into something, which is what most people do. With their tasks or with what they're trying to accomplish, projects, they just eventually crash into a wall and they make the best of it. Or they lower their standards, for that matter, and claim they didn't have to take off. But in fact, in order to take off, you have to go at least 100 times that average speed, not 10X, right? But then once you get the opportunity to go out and take off, once you get the cruising altitude, you could actually back off, and it's super easy to control the flight. It's easier to pick up speed or slow down or maneuver while you're in flight. Just a lot easier. It's the same thing with 10x is easier than 2x. And you'll find out once you go down this path that you'll be able to do 100 or even 1,000 times of what you're doing, just like an airplane. And you'll be able to accomplish so much more. But how is that even possible, right? As you gain momentum, just like heading down the runway, you'll figure out what works, what doesn't work. You'll find out inefficiencies as well as what's not needed altogether, right? You end up eliminating a ton of stuff that you thought was important no longer is when you actually create this urgency and time frame much shorter than the allotted time to create. So it's the opposite of Parkinson law. So you shorten the gap in order to create that urgency. Same thing that boot camp does for the military people. They shorten the gap and they have to do it all at once, and it gives them the most impact. You also find these better way to do things that actually help speed the process along, right? So by creating leverage opportunities, eliminating the waste, all of a sudden you get to go faster. And it's like a train, right? So the momentum just keeps you moving. So some people have said, well, what if you go too fast or you mess things up or things just ended up and it's a big mistake or whatever it might be, right? The reality is the faster you move, the smarter the results get, right? Or smarter you get to get the results. And there might be setbacks, right? And some of them will be huge. But the reality is what you learn along the way and how fast you pick it up will determine how fast you get to the next opportunity and have success. On other podcasts, I had mentioned one of the biggest things I've learned watching my kids play hockey is one of the biggest and most important thing you could do after a mistake or a setback is what you immediately do next, right? And the one example is you're playing a musical instrument and you miss the wrong note or miss the wrong chord. Just keep going, right? And it's the what you do next, and most people will never even notice it was there. Same thing, whether it's in sports or in business, right? The momentum's there, the urgency's there, and you're pushing through because you're working on that discipline. But most of the time, these setbacks, even in business or personal life, they're very minor, right? And so, there's lessons, and that's why I encourage journaling. I am not a good journalist, but you write these things down. It's like somewhat of a memoir, but basically, when you write it down, it concretes a little bit more into your mind, and you talk about basically with yourself on what that setback was and how to prevent it from happening again. And that's going to create even more momentum, more speed, you'll be able to accomplish more. But even if there's consistent setbacks, right? I don't know what the percentage would be. That's a completely different topic. But, let's just say that the setbacks are 10% of the time, right? And they do happen. And they happen regularly if you're moving fast enough. But I still think the 10% is quite high. I think it's much lower than that. But the question is do you take your chances on the 10% setbacks or the 90% success, right? It's the glass is half full or is it half empty, right? Many will say, well, just from common sense, the 90% success rate is better to focus on than the 10% setbacks. But when the rubber meets the road, many will quit. They'll focus more on the 10%. It's like eventually they start playing not to lose versus playing to win. And why is this, right? Well, part of it is because they lack the discipline to perform at that level, whether it's in work, it's at home, with relationships, or sports, it doesn't matter. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to work on and build upon that, right? You didn't max out on the bench press 300 pounds in the first work go. In fact, your max might probably be just the bar, which is typically 45 pounds, right? And that's okay. You got to start somewhere, right? You got to build the discipline. You got to work at it every single day to some capacity. Obviously, if you overwork the muscle, you have to change it and work other muscle groups. But that's just from a muscle standpoint. But from a discipline standpoint, it's all areas that need to be disciplined that feed to each other. Just same way in the gym, where you work other areas to feed to the same muscle you're trying to concentrate on. It doesn't mean you're going to not get to the destination or success or the speed of getting things done. every baby falls on their first of many attempts to walk, and then they start to run. And you will do the same thing. You're going to fall many times. You're going to have these setbacks. You're going to have the dust off, reload, and do it again. It's just part of the game. And you know what? Every time you pick yourself up and dust yourself off, now you have that experience that nobody else could take away. And then that's going to be more disciplined to keep moving forward. And it pays dividends over a period of time. And just another reason why everybody should have some type of mentor out there to learn from their experiences so you can get through things faster. But again, it's like a muscle that hasn't been worked before, and you have to keep at it. You have to start out once a week, maybe twice a week, and then just keep building upon it. And then all of a sudden, now you're doing it every single day. The most important thing is just to keep going, and just you'll make it to the end if you just don't quit. No matter if it's a benefits program, sales revenue goals, relationships, whatever it might be. Old habits do die hard. You have to work through that, right? From my experience, it's a lot like chopping wood, but with a dull axe or saw. Will you break down the wood and cut it in half? Absolutely. It will actually happen. It will just take a lot more time and a lot more effort to get you there. But what happens when it comes to the world of discipline and trying to accomplish more is as you're chopping that wood with a dull axe, you get stronger. But at the same time, along the way, your axe gets sharper, and just the way it goes. And then it becomes easier and easier and easier to chop through because you're being disciplined, you keep working, you're focused on the right activities, and it keeps going. It will become a lot easier to chop through it. Much like taking off with an airplane, it's much easier to gain speed to take off than if you're sitting at idle speed. So you have to get moving, you have to keep moving, and keep pushing through. Most people just sit at their idle speed their entire life and never take off. There's unfinished hopes and dreams that they never get to finish, but they reenact or reoccur those dreams and hopes when they're enjoying their grandkids. And in some cases, it's already too late. But there's always still hope and a will to accomplish more. But the same is in sports and the workplace. You have to start small and keep building upon it. Eventually, you'll have to you'll look back and you're miles away from where you even started. There's another book out there. It's called The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran. It is a book that they talk about taking your yearly goals and crushing it down to 12 weeks. You have 12 weeks to complete the goal. What happens is anything that's not important gets thrown out the window. Absolutely, right? And will you make it? Most likely you will because of the way most people operate their day-to-day lives. But even if you fail and don't hit it, who cares, right? You'll accomplish way more than you would in 3 months than you ever have in your entire life. There's no trophy in the end of the discipline line. You'll have more rewards in some ways, and eventually that could result in higher pay, but not from the finish line, though. Not by, if you set out goals that you're going to complete, let's say you're going to sell 10 cases a year, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to sell 10 cases in 12 months, and you only hit 8. Well, you're 3 months in, and you're already almost done with your year. But that doesn't mean you're going to start or stop there because you're going to keep going. You could regroup. You can reassess your goals. Maybe try to set them higher, right, in the second one. So even if you just repeated that one example that you were able to sell 8 accounts in the first 3 months, and you regroup and you go out there and you sell 8 more accounts in the next one. So you just increased your quota, so to speak, just by crushing or narrowing down the time frame that's in it. It goes back to Parkinson's law. You created more urgency. And most of the results aren't even tangible. You have to have faith and just keep forging ahead, even if you cannot see it now. So like if you set that example of 10, you never sold 10 in a year, but you want to crush it and move it down to 12 weeks, that is. If you wanted to go down to 12 weeks and try to use the same outcome, you're not going to see it until the very end. So you have to keep moving, right? And most of the time, you don't need to see the end. You just need to see what's in front of you. I always say when we talk about scuba diving in Lake Michigan, some people are like, how in the world can you scuba dive in Lake Michigan? I heard it's like murky. Sure, the zebra mussels are cleaning it up. I've been in Lake Michigan when it's been 2 inches of visibility. I've been in Lake Michigan when it's been 200 foot of visibility. The average is probably 40, but with those 2-inch dives, you're usually on a shipwreck. All you need to see is in front of you. Obviously, 2 inches is probably exaggerating. You only need to see what's in front of you to keep going, right? It's your discipline that's going to keep pushing you through. You're just going to have faith and stay the course. And just like most things, just don't give up. You'll make it. In sales and business, it's much of the same. Stay the course, work on being disciplined in the right areas, not the wrong areas, because a lot of people will focus on the wrong areas and they'll achieve results and they'll blame the system. You'll come out on the other side, though, much further along than your current situation where you sit now. So even with benefit renewals, you'll have to find the right activities to work on and stay the course. The issue is businesses get themselves so tied up in either it's a branded logo or emotionally tied to literally spending more money. It's unbelievable when we're detached from it, so we could see things differently than if you're involved in it. They get tunnel vision, and they would rather just spend more money than have to make change, as if they have the gold standard already, but they don't know how to control the costs or outcomes. Employees are complaining their out-of-pocket expenses are way too high. What are you going to do about it? Just keep passing on more? How's that going to change things? And in fact, if you stay that course, you're going to fall further and further behind, and basically holding yourself hostage because you don't want to make the change. You don't want to become more disciplined and take the leap of faith and head in the right direction, right? You got to work on this. So even with a benefits program, there's savings out there for small and some medium-sized companies of hundreds of thousands of dollars over a period of time, that by just working small disciplines over a period of time and getting further ahead. This would make a huge impact, right? What if over a 5-year period, you save $450,000 in premium expenses, right? And then some on lower out-of-pocket for your employees. But you have to be disciplined in the right areas and change the way you're thinking, because the current way of thinking is not going to solve your problem. We have a renewal that we're working on right now that we're potentially, after underwriting, everything's done, they're going to save $1.4 million a year. In the first year. But they have to change their habits. They have to change the way they do the benefits renewal. They have to put out some education pieces to their employees. It will take discipline to keep moving through it. But that's year one, right? If you focus on the right activities and stay the course with purpose, they'll keep moving ahead. And this example, if you look forward 5 years from now, it's going to be multi-millions of dollars worth of savings. Despite the increases they may get along the way, they're still going to come millions of dollars ahead. And so even for yourself, if you focus on the right activities and stay the course, you'll find yourself at least 1,000 times further than you are now.